Hiya, this tutorial is looking at motivation, section A2, theories of motivation. Okay, the first theory is need to achieve theory, where athletes are motivated to either achieve or they're motivated to avoid failure. This theory links personality with situation. So there are two key terms there, personality and situation. And it uses this to predict the outcomes of somebody, whether they're going to participate in something or not, whether they're going to be motivated when they participate in something or not. So, the need to achieve theory looks at behaviour of athletes in 4 different areas. We've identified the first 2 here with personality traits and situational factors. So it is linking personality with situation. Personality traits, first of all, they are enduring qualities that make up a person's character. So enduring means they're stable, they don't really change, they're born with them, they're innate, all of these sorts of words. This theory states that high achievers have a high motivation to succeed and low motivation to fail. So the emotions that they feel are pride and satisfaction, and they enjoy the feel of those emotions. Low achievers, however, have a high motivation to avoid failure as opposed to achieving success. So they have a low motivation to achieve success. The emotions that they tend to feel are shame and low self-worth. The situational factors are assessed in 2 areas, and the first of that is probability of success. So you look at the situation and you say, how likely are we, or how likely am I going to succeed in this event, in this competition? So it looks at the skill level of the opposition, it looks at the environmental factors like the playing surface. So Nadal is well known for being like utterly amazing on clay, but not so good, although still world class, on grass and other surfaces. So the situation for him, the probability of success in the French Open where they play on clay is very, very high. The probability of success at Wimbledon on grass is lower, particularly when you're coming up against someone as amazing as Federer. The incentive value relates to how you perceive the task. So whether you perceive the task to be worthy of you or not. So for example, if you are, well, obviously you're in the 6th form, if you were playing a year 7 team, you would have what we say a low incentive value, because really there's going to be no pride if you beat them. If it was a 6th form versus staff, then it would have a higher incentive value because of experience. They're quite well matched, a sort of 50-50 challenge. You don't know who's going to win. There's a lot riding on it, and a lot of pride riding on it. So if you were to win, you would be proud of yourselves, and you should be proud of yourselves from beating the amazing Queg staff that we have. So this theory, the need to achieve theory, looks at how athletes are motivated, whether they're motivated to achieve success or to avoid failure. To work this out, they look at personality traits of a person, and they notice that high achievers have a high motivation to succeed and low motivation to fail, and low achievers have a high motivation to avoid failure. They then take into account on top of that the situational factors, and you look at 2 areas, the probability of success, which is the skill level and environmental factors, and the incentive value, your perception of how valued the task is going to be. There's another 2 areas here that it then looks at. We have resultant tendencies and emotional reactions. So we'll look at resultant tendencies first. This says that high achievers will seek 50-50 challenge. So they will take on a task where there is uncertainty, in fact, maximum uncertainty. It makes it more exciting. They're driven by it because they don't know whether they're going to win or lose, but they know that they have to try their hardest. Low achievers seek situations that can easily be won or easily be lost, where there's no expectation for them. If a year 7 team were to play the 6th form team, the year 7 team, if their need was to avoid failure, would enjoy that task because they're not going to lose face if they lose the match, because no one is expecting them to win, no one is making that judgment. So it's a way of protecting their ego. Finally, then we look at emotional reactions. So the amount of pride and shame that they feel. Pride and shame are key words in this theory. So the amount of pride and shame that are felt. Both want to feel pride. Both want to feel proud of what they've done. They want to be seen as achieving. However, someone who is considered a high achiever will want to always maximise pride, and they'll do that through hard work and through going in challenging situations where it means something, it has a high incentive value to win it, even though the probability of their success is 50-50. A low achiever will basically just go into a situation to minimise the shame. So that might mean that they go into a game and they say, oh yeah, I'll play this 50-50 game, but not really get involved in it. They will seek out a situation where they can just avoid any shame. So if the ball comes towards them, they will move themselves out of the way so they're not seen to fail in a situation where people are expecting that they should be able to achieve. Okay, next theory is achievement goal theory. This looks at two orientations for motivation. And it says that athletes are motivated either by task or by outcome orientation. Outcome orientation is also referred to as ego orientation. So the differences between the two. Task orientation is a goal to master a skill. They have a goal to master it. They want to get better at it. They want to improve their skill level. And so it's related to ability and improvement, and it's linked to self-confidence and is self-referenced, or it's referred to as self-referenced. Task orientation should be encouraged over ego, as little or no control can be gained over the opposition. So let me explain outcome for you. So outcome orientation compares your performance to others. You're motivated to be better than other people on your circuit. You're out there to have enough skill to beat the person that you're going to be up against. It's therefore what we call externally referenced, because you are referring to or comparing yourself to the achievements of other people. Whereas in this task orientated, you are comparing yourself to previous achievements that you have done. So task orientated is also referred to as self-referenced, and outcome or ego orientated motivations are externally referenced because they compare to other people and your opposition. So going back to this part here, task orientation being encouraged over ego orientation. This makes a bit more sense now, because you can see here with the outcome orientation, you have no control. You've got no control in your opposition at all. So you can be up against a player and you can think, right, that's how good they are. I need to go away and work on that and do that. But at the same time, that person's going away and working out as well. You don't know what the training program is. They might have been having a bad day that day and actually be better than that. So then the next time you meet them, you feel that you've trained hard enough and you've worked on the right things to beat them, and you lose. So it can be devastating to motivation. Therefore, task motivation, if somebody is training and then they just look at their own performance and how they're improving, yeah, they might still lose to that person. That person might always be better than them. However, what they're focusing on is the fact that prior to that, maybe they only got 15 tackles against that person because they were able to be have the speed to get there. With their training in this game, they've done 23. So yes, that person overpowered them again, but they've gone from 15 tackles to 23 tackles. So it shows improvement. Therefore, you're more likely to continue to be motivated. So Nichols in 1989 identified that athletes ego-orientated suffer with high levels of anxiety as well before practice or in competition. So this is a major issue. If somebody is always comparing themselves to somebody else or making judgments about what other people can and can't do, they're more likely to be anxious before practicing and competition. if you are anxious going into practice, going into training, you are not going to be as effective. If you are not as effective at training, you're not going to be as effective in competition. If you're also anxious when you get to competition, you're going to be even less effective. So it can have a massive impact on performance. It's related to, or this anxiety is related to, a feeling of being judged or evaluated by somebody. And that is because you compare yourself to other people all the time. Okay, so the third theory, and it's called self-determination theory. So the theory suggests that you are more likely to be motivated if you choose the activity yourself rather than it being enforced by somebody. So effectively, somebody who chooses to go to Aztecs football will be more motivated than somebody who is made to play football in a PE lesson. So it reflects the extent to which participation is freely chosen. That's what the self-determination theory is. So it suggests that an athlete may be amotivated, that means demotivated, as we know, towards an enforced activity, and will only be self-determined if the activity is freely chosen and enjoyed by the athlete. The athlete must have full control of this activity to be completely self-determined. So the theory says that if you are self-determined, then you are effectively, we know it as intrinsically motivated, so therefore you're going to put more effort in and have a higher level of task persistence and therefore achieve more. So that's what the theory is looking at, or that's at least what it's saying to people. This is what we need to try and achieve with your team, with your sports team. So the theory relates enforced activities to extrinsic motivation and freely chosen activities to intrinsic motivation. It splits intrinsic motivation into 4 categories. Before I do that, just want to point out that self-determined person who has chosen their activity themselves and has full control of it is linked to intrinsic motivation. Somebody who has had an activity enforced on them, they're made to do it, is using or under the influence of extrinsic motivation. So this extrinsic motivation, they've recognised that it doesn't have the same impact as intrinsic or self-determined motivation, and they've split it into 4 categories and said that these can also affect the level of motivation. So the first one we'll look at is external regulation. And this is the participation for awards. So it could be participation for praise from a coach or from a parent. It could be that you want to win money or a trophy. But it is externally regulated. It's participation for something. Number 2 is introjected regulation. So participation to avoid guilt. And make people happy. So you take part every week, you go to your club because you feel guilty if you don't, because your parents have always taken you there and you know that they love that you do that activity. So you carry on going because you know it makes them happy. Number 3, identified regulation. Participation in something the athlete feels has value or benefit, even though they don't enjoy it. There's quite a few sports out there where, for example, rugby, where flexibility is a massive thing, and they are asked to do yoga. Now, some of them might absolutely hate doing yoga, but they will still take part in it, and they will participate because they know the benefit and the value of it, and they know that it will improve their game, and that's where their passion is, that's where their drive is. So although they don't like yoga, they are willing to do it for the greater good for their rugby match, to improve their rugby performance. The final part of extrinsic motivation then is integrated regulation. So this is suggested by a coach, and this is why it's classed as extrinsic, and it is clutching at straws. It's only just extrinsic, but it's suggested by a coach and accepted by the athlete. So the coach's suggestion is external, so therefore classed just as an extrinsic motivator. So integrated regulation is somebody participating in an activity that has been suggested by the coach. Right. The Evaluation of the self-determination theory. So like a summary of it, basically self-determination leads to increased task persistence. They found that out. It also leads to an increased ability to deal with stress levels. Therefore, an activity is freely chosen, you will have self-determination, and it's related to intrinsic. So they're saying if you choose the activity yourself, you will have self-determination. That leads to higher task persistence, which if you've got higher task persistence in training, in competition, you're going to be more likely to achieve peak performance. The other thing is it has the added benefit of increasing your ability to deal with stress. Huge impact in competition in particular, where if you have been motivated all the way through, you're intrinsically motivated, you're self-determined, then that stress will not impact your performance as much as someone who has been forced to do the task in the first place. If you can cope with stress and you've got good high task persistence, peak performance is very likely to be reached. So this is the final theory. This is Weiner's attribution theory, and this theory gives reasons for success or failure. The reasons can impact the level of motivation and influence future expectation or self-confidence. So basically, if you can say why someone has succeeded and why they have failed sensibly, then you can motivate somebody and you can ensure that their self-confidence is high when they go to participate in future activities. So this is how it's done, or this is how it's suggested. Made a quick change there, you might have noticed. Deliberate mistake. So at the top here you've got locus of control, and you have internal, which is under your control, and examples of internal control are your ability. So this is relatively innate. It doesn't really change. Skill can change, but ability can't, and they're different things, which I need to point out. Skill is a learned behaviour, and ability is like a raw talent, if you like. Effort is under your control as well. You decide how much effort you're going to put in when you start to play a game. So these things that are out of your control, the external factors out of your control. Task difficulty, so this refers to the opponents. You cannot control who you are playing. You can't control which team you're going to play, and you can't control who is going to be in that team and what subs they're going to make, etc. The other thing that is out of your control is luck. Again, you could say that it's down to luck, what ref you could get, what umpire you could get. In netball, if you're playing outside still, which end you get to shoot into first, whether it's shooting into the sunlight or not. There are a lot of things that you can blame or attribute to luck on the day. So we've got two other areas here. We're on the locus of stability, so how stable something is, and we're looking at this stable area that's fairly permanent, and you are looking at unstable, which means that on one day it could be this, and on the next day it could have changed. So on the stable line, we've got ability again. So I've already sort of touched on the fact that ability is quite innate. So it is permanent. It doesn't really change. Skill can change. Ability can't. Task difficulty is also fairly stable. And that's in the fact that, yes, you can't control who is going to be in that fixture, in that team, but it is fairly stable in terms of your leagues. So you know roughly who you're going to be up against, and that's not really going to change. If you're entering world-class events, then you're going to be up against world-class athletes. For unstable, so the changeable things is your level of effort. So you're in control of it, but that can also change from moment to moment, from game to game, from season to season. The other thing that is changeable, that is very unstable, is luck. So this is what the theory actually suggests then. So the research suggests that successful athletes will attribute their success, or should attribute their success, to internal stable factors. Internal stable factors. So we've got ability. So research suggests that if an athlete is successful and they attribute their success to their own ability, then they are protecting their ego, they're boosting their ego, they're boosting their self-confidence. This is called a self-serving bias, or at least that's half of it. The other half of it is that if this athlete fails, so they go out, they're a good athlete, they work hard, they go out to a fixture and it goes horribly wrong, then the theory suggests to protect this ego, to give them a self-serving bias, to protect their self-confidence, that you would then attribute their failure to external, so stuff that was out of their control, factors that were out of their control, and unstable. So you're saying, look, okay, it was bad today, but next time you participate, it might be good. So luck. And you will have done it yourselves, I'm sure. I know I've done it. You've lost a fixture or you haven't played particularly well. Rather than say, oh God, I'm terrible, I just can't do it, I'm not good enough, because there's no changing that. It's quite demoralising. Come on, you've all done it, you've had a go at the ref. Oh, you were so unlucky. You were so unlucky with that call because she was standing at the wrong place or she didn't see it, or we've just got that ref again and they hate us and they like the other team. Oh, yeah, it was luck that that person's birthday was on this date, so they were still allowed to play in that age group, so they shouldn't have been allowed to play in it really because they played in the other one. All of these sorts of things that we have a big old moan about at the end, if you think about it, they can change. It's not going to be the same when we go to that game the next time. It's out of our control. It's not your fault. So you're basically saying to yourself, look, if you fail, oh, it wasn't our fault and it will change next time. But if you're successful, you're going, oh yeah, that was all down to us. That was either down to your ability or possibly even your effort. If you're going to really big yourself up, yeah, we were brilliant. We were really good. We've got a high level of ability. We deserve to win that game. So that's your self-serving bias. You're being biased towards yourself to give yourself a little boost. So stable attributions can predict or give people expectation of future success if they are used. So if you're if you're attributing success and you attribute them to stable factors, at the very least, stable internal really is the best one to do. But stable factors for success are can preserve people's expectations. They will, by preserving expectations, I mean that they will appreciate that next time they will be successful. They'll think they're going to be successful from that point onwards because you've picked out stable factors. Failure should always be to unstable factors, otherwise it's demoralising. If it's not going to change, why do we bother? So it protects future chances of success. And internal attributions, this ability in this effort, are ego enhancing. So if you attribute success to internal factors, then you are boosting somebody's confidence. So yeah, if it wasn't their ability, if it wasn't because they were the best player ever, it was because they really, really busted a gut. They, for 90 minutes of the match, they just kept trying, they just went for it. Then yes, they deserve a bit of praise and credit, and that will enhance their ego, enhance their self-confidence for the next time they play. And that's basically it. The theory is that if you lose, you pick external unstable, best scenario, unstable if not, and if you win, it's stable and internal, so your ability, or just stable, so task difficulty as well. So thank you for listening to me waffle on for another 15 minutes or so. Can you now check your understanding using the questions on page 107 in your book? Turn off the video, pause it, and I'll give you the answers when you're ready. Okay, question 1. Explain how need achievement theory can account for our choice of opponents. This is a big answer. It's asking you to cover the whole topic, essentially. So you should have started off saying primarily it's a look to assess whether an athlete is motivated to succeed or to avoid failure. So they're two key terms initially. This is all to do with looking at the factors of personality, or personality traits, those enduring factors of personality, and the situation someone is in. So you should have personality traits and you should have situation. Under personality, you should then discuss high achievers that will try to achieve success, and low achievers will try to avoid failure. Under the heading of situation, you should have the probability of success, and an example of that is consideration to the environment that somebody is in and the skill level of the opposition, so who they're about to play. And the incentive value, this also comes under situation, the incentive value of the task, how much value you perceive the task has. So are your opponents worthy opponents? And the example in the book is for the FA Cup. So you have two teams in the FA Cup, and we're looking at lower levels of the FA Cup, the initial rounds. Your probability of success would be low for a local team in the FA Cup, but the incentive value is very high, therefore motivation would be high. You should then go on to explain that the probability of success for Arsenal, perhaps in the lower rounds of the FA Cup, are high, but their incentive value is quite low because of their perception of the opponents, because they think it's going to be easy. So therefore, they would have a lower level of motivation. I mean, we've got to accept that they're professional athletes. They're going to have a certain level of motivation anyway, but it would be lower than if they were playing Man City in the finals, for example. So we can't stop there. You then have to go into resultant tendencies, and you would need to look at high achievers seeking 50-50 situations, challenging situations. They don't know whether they're going to win or lose. That's what they're driven by. And low achievers are seeking very easy wins. So the sixth form playing a year 7 team, or low achievers will look to enter a situation where they will not lose face by getting hammered by another team. So if our sixth form team, football team, were going to go and play Arsenal, we know we're going to lose it, so there would be no probability of success, etc. So there are your resultant tendencies that impact somebody's level of motivation according to this theory. So the last part was the emotional reactions, the amount of pride or shame that an athlete places on the activities, or places on their ability to succeed or to fail. So a high achiever will try to maximise pride. A low achiever will want to feel pride, but they will only feel pride through minimising shame. So a high achiever maximises pride, a low achiever minimises shame. And that's the main difference. So when you consider these 4 factors, so we've got personality traits, situation, resultant tendencies and emotional reactions, the theory then tells us why an athlete has chosen to behave in the way they have, in the situations they have, and why they have selected that task. Question 2. Identify the difference between an individual who is self-referenced and one who is externally referenced. I'd start with the answer by acknowledging it's the achievement goal theory, and that there's 2 orientations. There's task orientation and outcome or ego orientation. I would stick to the word outcome as ego is in brackets. For task orientation, I'd then explain what it was. So it's mastery of a skill, and this is also known as self-measuring. So you are looking at your achievements against those that you have achieved previously, so your previous achievements. Your outcome orientation measures your ability whilst comparing yourself to other people. So your motivation is to be more skillful than your opponent. This is externally measured. So it's a measure by comparing yourself to other people rather than comparing yourself to previous achievements. Question 3. Explain what is meant by self-determination and why it is important in sport. So 2 parts of the question. So the first part, you would need to talk about the theory. So you would say it reflects the extent to which participation in activities are freely chosen. The general gist of it is, if you choose to do the activity and you choose how the activity is done, you're more likely to be motivated than if somebody enforces an activity on you. There's a link with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and effectively the link is the intrinsic part of it is if you have chosen it yourself, you are intrinsically motivated, therefore you have full control of the sessions, therefore you enjoy it and it motivates you, and this is the more important factor. This is what will give you increased task persistence. It will increase the likelihood of you being able to cope with stress, which is really important at competitive events. And therefore, if you can cope with stress and you've got better task persistence, your peak performance is more likely to be achieved. So that's all linked through the intrinsic route. The extrinsic route is looking at the link with the enforced activities. So someone is making you do an activity that you don't necessarily enjoy or want to do or see value in. It acknowledges that this can be to different extents depending on the type of extrinsic motivation. So they've split this extrinsic into 4 sections. So you then would have needed to have said external regulation and explained that this is to gain praise or prize. The introjected regulation, this is participation to please other people like parents, family, to avoid guilt and avoid anxiety issues. Number 3 would be identified regulation, which is participation freely for the benefits, but you don't actually enjoy it. So it could be, the example in the book was weight training to avoid injury. Number 4 was integrated regulation, and this is freely taking part in an activity because it's been suggested by the coach. So it's come from an external source, but you can see the benefits, so you do it. This is classed in this theory as extrinsic motivation. And question 4, explain the 4 types of attribution an individual can make to account for their success or their failure. So first of all, that you would say that Weiner's attribution theory looks for reasons for success and failure, because this will affect the level of motivation and their future expectations, so the level of self-confidence in the future. So basically the theory says that if somebody is successful, if athletes are successful in their match or their fixture, then they should attribute their success to internal factors such as effort or ability, and most favourable would be internal and stable factors. They're fairly permanent, and that would be their ability. So if they succeed in something, you should attribute that to their ability. This is an ego-boosting thing, which is called a self-serving bias. So it protects their self-confidence. It can grow their self-confidence. If you fail at an activity, then the safest thing to do, because it protects the ego, it protects the self-confidence, is to attribute that failure to external factors. So they personally are not to blame for it. So task difficulty or luck. If you have the opportunity, then the best one, the least damaging one to choose would be the unstable external, because the unstable is changeable. It will change between one game and the next. And luck can include things like the reffing. So we were unlucky today because we had that ref and we know he doesn't like us, and that's why we lost the game. So you're not taking... you're acknowledging that this is changeable and it's out of your control. You would need to mention, to get full marks, locus of stability, and have internal and external, under your control, out of your control. And you would have needed locus of control, whether it was stable or unstable. And you would need to have highlighted in the correct areas ability, task difficulty, effort and luck. So my suggestion would be that you would have drawn the table out to start with. That's it. So the next tutorial is going to be A3, motivational environment and its influence on the sports performers. That's on the next video. Thank you.